Hello, everybody. We're so excited to have you here with us today. Welcome to RAI's 2023. I am Patrick McAndrew. I am the Member Engagement and Community Manager at the Responsible AI Institute. And I also have the privilege of being your MC today. I'm very excited. This is actually my first event with the Responsible AI Institute as well. For those of you who aren't familiar with RAIS is the Responsible AI Institute's annual community event dedicated to bringing positive impact into the field and continuing to raise the bar for responsible AI. And it's great to see so many of you joining us today. I see some of our members here on the chat as well as our supporters. So just a big welcome to our global community. So just to kind of give you a brief outline of what today is going to look like, we are going to give you a brief overview of all the great things that are happening within the AI community and what it accomplished in 2023. After that, we will be hosting a panel discussion on the future of responsible AI. And following that, we will present our 2023 RAIS Leadership and Responsible AI Awards, which I am very excited about. And then we'll finally conclude our event today by just giving a look ahead as to what to expect in 2024. So I've talked a little bit about RAIS, but for those of you who are attending today who may not be familiar with the Responsible AI Institute, I want to kind of explain a little bit what we are all about. We are a member-driven global nonprofit dedicated to enabling successful responsible AI efforts for all types of organizations. The Responsible AI Institute's resources for AI systems for supporting practitioners as they navigate complex landscapes of creating, selling, and buying AI products. And through our global network of responsible AI experts, many of whom are attending today, the Responsible AI Institute offers valuable insights to practitioners, policymakers, and regulators to enable these technologies to improve the social and economic well-being of society at large. So with all of that said, I'm very excited to pass things off to Var, who will share an overview of the responsible AI initiatives in 2023.
Great. Thank you so much, Patrick, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Var Shankar. I am the Executive Director of the Responsible AI Institute. I'm so excited to welcome everyone to our annual event. And I'm really looking forward to our all-star panel and to our awards for leadership in responsible AI. So our nonprofit organization was founded 7 years ago to develop AI responsibly and in a community-driven way. 2023 was our biggest year yet. So this was the year in which AI adoption and impact, as well as the policy and community response, were significant. So I'll speak first a little bit about that technology and policy landscape, and then about how our community responded to it. Great. So generative AI improved significantly in 2023. It was the year of multimodal. So even though generative AI captured the public imagination late last year, this was the year in which you didn't just have text inputs to text or image outputs, but increasingly text to image, text to speech, numerical, and even video, and then also having inputs and outputs in different modes. So we saw a lot of those functionalities rolled out in kind of commercial direct to everybody products late this year. We also saw the leading large language model providers carve out spaces for themselves in the ecosystem. So OpenAI, of course, is one of the leading large language model providers. Just last week, we saw Google launch its Gemini product, which it's rolling out directly into Bard. And we've seen Anthropic focus increasingly on AI safety. Meta and Mistral focus on open source efforts, and others kind of carve out roles for themselves in the space. Um, and across the board with all of these leading providers, we've seen significant improvements in their capabilities. The other interesting trend here is the adoption time. So ChatGPT use grew much faster than TikTok or Instagram. It reached 100 million users in just 2 months of launch. And as for Gemini, it can now roll out directly to all platforms, uh, platforms that use Bard, including Google Search. And so it's not just the improvement in technology, but also the reduced adoption time that's necessitating a strong response. 2023 was also the year in which we saw policymakers get serious. So we've been anticipating the EU AI Act reaching some kind of political agreement for years now, and we were really excited over the weekend to see that the parties had reached a political agreement and will have a new draft out soon. They reached a compromise on foundation models and exemptions for R&D, open source, and defense uses. Um, and we're really excited to have Kai Zenner on our panel today, who is deeply involved in those negotiations and will hopefully share some of his insights. We also saw action on this side of the Atlantic with the Biden executive order putting forth requirements for powerful general purpose models, as well as requirements for federal agencies. And this is huge because it's going to shape the procurement conversation going forward. And the combined effect of both of these legislative efforts is to make AI law at the federal level not just something a nice to have, but something that's being seriously discussed with bipartisan efforts in the U.S. Senate. So we've seen both technology developments and the policy impact. So how has our organization and our community been affected by these changes? So the first thing I'll say is that in 2023, our community grew significantly. And you'll see that the new members that we've had join our community vary a lot in terms of their industries, their sizes, whether they're service providers or industry members. And we're really excited that all of these organizations that are leading their industries and leading their spaces in responsible AI adoption are joining our movement. And I'll also say our existing members who've supported us for years and helped a big thank you to our existing members who supported us for years and helped our learning. You've been with us from the beginning, and you've been with us over the landmark year of 2023. So can we get the next slide to see the full community here? So thank you so much to everybody who's kind of joined us along this journey. Can we get the next slide? Great. So we see that there's a lot of translation work to be done between practitioners, researchers, and policymakers. And we have been engaged in that work with both the UK government, the US government, the Canadian government, and others over the course of this year. With the NIST AI RMF, we co-hosted webinars with NIST that many of you on the call here today attended and provided feedback on. Thank you so much. We provided input into Canada's Bill C-27 and joined onto an open letter supporting that draft law. And we convened a transatlantic AI and finance roundtable with the financial regulators in the UK and Canada to discuss how laws, standards, and certification programs can come together to achieve regulatory objectives in the financial services industry. This is the kind of work that's really key to our mission of closing the gaps between policymakers, industry, and researchers. We have also been advancing our industry-leading AI certification program. So in 2023, we piloted our certification in two different use cases, industries and geographies. The first was a financial services use case with our members ATB and Fairly that was convened by the Standards Council of Canada. And the second, which is ongoing, is using our assessments and certification scheme in a dermatology use case with the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York. So these disparate pilots are ensuring that the AI certification is fit for purpose for a different types of use cases. We have also been based on member feedback, probing industry relevant themes. So this is just a handful of them. Employment and workforce is on everybody's mind. So we've had an automated employment working group that's completed a calibration of our assessment to that context. We have the AI certification working group, which surveys at the 10,000 foot level. Where is there progress and where are there gaps in the functioning of the AI certification ecosystem? And the Responsible AI and ESG Leadership Working Group, which was formed just last month, will provide guidance on how to integrate metrics between responsible AI and ESG for organizations. And we also, on December 7th, so last week, we were really excited to launch the RAISE benchmarks in beta. And these benchmarks are aligned with the leading regulatory and laws, instruments, and regulations. So the NIST AI RMF, ISO 42001, and the EU AI Act. So we will have these three benchmarks in beta until June of next year. Measurement against the RAISE benchmarks must always be done by a person. And our effort, though, is to provide automated tools, automated scalable tools that can help with a first draft so that responsible AI programs at our member organizations can scale. So with that, I'm hoping we can go to a demo of the RAISE corporate AI policy benchmark for everyone on the call here.
Welcome to our demo of the automated version of the RAISE. Welcome to our demo of the automated version of the RAISE corporate AI policy benchmark tool, which is in beta. The tool can be found by visiting www.responsible.ai/benchmarks and locating the Corporate AI Policy tool. This tool gauges how well a company's enterprise AI policy aligns with the Responsible AI Institute's Model Enterprise AI Policy based on the NIST AI Risk Management Framework. First, the company policy is uploaded. The Process Report button is then pressed. The policy is scored for each benchmark in the RAISE benchmarks and for each dimension in the 7 NIST dimensions. A summary of the metrics is also displayed. The Details tab is selected to display more information about the scores. The company policy is scanned for each statement in the Responsible AI Institute's Model Enterprise AI Policy. For each statement, a score is given, corresponding to how well the company policy aligns with it. The Version History tab tracks the scores of the policy over time, giving insight into the progress made. Click the Download Report button to view the Responsible AI Assessment Results and Recommendations report. For each section of the NIST AI RMF, Govern, Manage, Map, and Measure, a percentage coverage pie chart is shown, along with recommendations about how to improve the company policy to better align with the NIST AI RMF. For example, in the Govern section, the first recommendation is to enhance the compliance and legal framework. The report details 4 steps on how to achieve this. This experimental tool is only meant to create a first draft of the analysis and all of its work should be checked by a human being. Thank you for watching the demo. Welcome to our
Great. Thank you so much. So, yes, so we're really excited for these RAI's benchmarks. Thanks again for everyone who supported us in 2023. With that, I will pass it to Alyssa, our Global Head of Partnerships, to begin the panel.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Super excited for this panel. We have a stacked conversation today. So the topic is the future of responsible AI, emerging trends, challenges, and definitely a call to action. So we're going to be talking with our panelists to examine frontier technologies like generative AI, and discuss the risks requiring the vigilant governance I know a lot of us are working on. We're going to try really hard to make all of this very tangible and actionable, how practitioners, policymakers, and the public can actively shape an AI future that works for all of us and for humanity. So it's going to be about a 40-minute conversation. We're definitely going to try and keep some time for questions at the end. So put some in the chat and we'll definitely try to address them. With that, I'm going to introduce our esteemed panelists. So if we could go to the next slide, that would be great. All right, to kick it off, we have Ashley Pantolino, who is the Deputy General Counsel at OpenAI, Kai Zenner, who is the Head of Office MEP Axel Voss at the European Parliament. Var mentioned that he's been busy over the last couple of days. Josephine Yam, who is the CEO and co-founder of Skills for Good, and Paul Donga, the Group Head of Data and AI Ethics at Lloyds Banking Group. And so I'll be moderating today, and I'm looking forward to kicking it off. So we're just going to pin the panelists and start the conversation with a quick question, and I'll have all of the panelists introduce themselves as well. But I imagine this year has been like super low key, very slow, and with limited change for everyone. Just kidding. With all jokes aside, I wanted to hear from the panelists on what surprised you most this year, or what was the most impactful development for you in AI or responsible AI. So I'd like to kick it off with Josephine to introduce herself. Then we'll go to Paul, Ashley, ending with Kai. So say hello, introduce yourself, and talk about what shook you this year in 2023.
Thank you, Alyssa. A very pleasant good afternoon. I am Josephine Yam. I'm an AI lawyer, AI ethicist, and the CEO and co-founder of Skills for Good AI. We help organizations and professionals upskill themselves with a responsible AI mindset so they can thrive in the age of AI. And to the question of Alyssa, what are the three things that were most impactful for us in the development of AI? It actually boils to the convergence of three things: innovation, regulation, and education. So first, innovation, of course, that's where we see generative AI and ChatGPT, where now hundreds of millions of people have access to AI in our daily lives. The second is regulation, with the introduction of the EU Artificial Intelligence Act, which finally provides guardrails to enhance responsible AI innovation. And the third, in addition to innovation and regulation, is education, because now professionals and organizations are very keen to upskill and reskill themselves to be able to have very effective human-machine interaction, to be able to make sense of how AI can be used for good.
Thanks, Josephine. That's awesome. Paul, what happened for you in 2023?
Yeah, Alyssa. Yeah, hi, hello everyone. Just checking you can hear me okay.
We can.
Great, thank you. Well, look, first of all, thank you for the invitation to be here. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I'm really delighted to be able to participate. So I think, what was most impactful, yes, large language models, ChatGPT, and everything that's happened since around the transformer architecture. So that was quite an easy one, right? I'd be surprised if anyone thought there was anything more impactful in the AI space. But what surprised me most was actually how successful it's been and the passion with which different organizations want to adopt it. So globally, and certainly I can speak for financial services because that's the industry that I work in. The appetite to want to adopt it across many different areas of the business has really surprised me. Right, I'm aware of how the technology works and its limitations, of which there are many, but the sheer passion and the desire to want to use it across different business use cases, aside from just coding and development, it's kind of been unprecedented. And I was slightly more cautious in the early days. I thought, look, people are going to be a little bit more skeptical. They're going to say, well, hold on, the transformer architecture in of itself is not really deterministic. We need to really slow down and go about this quite kind of thoughtfully. But I'm not seeing that, right? I'm seeing instead a real desire to want to adopt it across many industries.
Thanks, Paul. Ashley.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm really, really excited to be here. I can talk about what's also surprised me the most. I'll just piggyback on Paul's there. Was I think from the OpenAI perspective, I'm sure many people have heard this already, but ChatGPT was supposed to be a low-key research preview. That technology existed through our API already. And so it was kind of just like a chat feature with, like a very basic chat UI slapped on top of the technology. And so what really surprised me was how much people did adopt it and how it has been able to help a lot of people with many, many different use cases, like Paul said, beyond just what, like you would think just talking to a chatbot or asking it for information that, you can't really rely on. Things beyond coding, like education and research and content creation and helping people with language barriers and learning disabilities. And I think those are the use cases that have been really, really exciting and surprising to me. And so just really have enjoyed seeing how people use it and how many people really, really love the tool.
Yes, Ashley, my dad was sending me poems and stuff with ChatGPT, so that definitely means it's hit the mainstream, absolutely. And last but certainly not least, Kai.
Yes, sorry, I just had here problems to unmute myself. So many people might think that I was surprised that we finally reached a deal in the European Union on the AI Act, but there I need to say I saw it coming because there was indeed over the last months more and more political pressure to finally overcome our discussions within the European Union, because especially the high level policymakers really want to also a little bit showcase the AI Act in front of the European election next June. And for that to be possible, we need to close the AI Act very soon, vote on it, so that lawyer, linguists, legal service, translators, and so on can do their magic, and this law can really be published next year. What surprised me therefore the most was actually the agreement between China and the United States on lethal automatic weapon systems, because there I was never thinking that those two could agree on something like this. And yeah, I think it's actually a rather good signal that despite all the problems between larger powers around the globe, there is still a chance to find at least some common understanding.
Yeah. I will stick with you for a bit, and I hope you've napped extensively this weekend after a marathon few. He's like later after a marathon few days of negotiations, and so I just want to stay on the theme of kind of the EU-AI Act and some of the big things that came out of it. And so we saw issues like foundation models and open source models change the nature of the EUA, the Act and the agreement and the negotiations in general. So what are some of the people and dynamics that you're watching like most closely as this text continues to get fine-tuned?
Yeah, so we in the European Parliament were really heavily engaging with OpenAI, DeepMind, a lot of those really advanced foundation model developers, but also other startups, AI companies, and so on. But actually also quite a lot with the open source community, not only GitHub and Hugging Face, but also here in Europe, we have the Open Forum Europe, the Free Software Alliance, and so on. And those people gave us a lot of very, very interesting feedback that actually convinced us as European Parliament, but then later on also the Council of the European Union, so the member states, that there should be foundation models and open source as an element of the AI Act, because at the beginning, the Commission didn't really think about those two topics, but based on all the feedback that we received, there was very fast cross-party understanding that those two topics need to be discussed in the AI Act, and that certain, let's say, obligations should be included, especially when it comes to information sharing along the value chain. Because if the downstream companies do not have enough information about the model, they would fail to get compliant with the AI Act. And this we really wanted to fix.
Thank you. I think let's pivot and talk to Ashley a little bit about this. Ashley, fair to say you've had a busy and kind of interesting last couple of weeks at OpenAI. And, coming out of some of that, there has been interesting discussion and speculation about AI safety and kind of and OpenAI's approach to AI safety. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how you prioritize and address safety internally at OpenAI, and maybe some of the things that Kai mentioned.
Yeah, for sure. So OpenAI has always been and continues to be committed to developing safe and beneficial AI. It's part of our mission, it's the foundation for our company, and it's the only purpose that our company has. We don't have a separate ads business. We're not a social media company. There's no other type of revenue stream. Our mission is to bring safe and beneficial AI to the world. So we really have focused on that, and you may not be able to see externally, but internally it really is, it's sort of permeated throughout our company. And so as a result of that, in terms of our approach to AI safety, we have sort of a distributed model. We have many teams that are dedicated to safety and governance at our company. There's no one officer that is responsible for mandating AI safety. It doesn't come down from like one person making everyone do it. Like legal's not in charge of all of the safety efforts. It really is distributed across a number of teams, and it's everyone's responsibility. And that's actually been really nice for as a lawyer, in legal. There's a lot of things that are just part of our culture, and it's really refreshing. And we also sort of self-select for that. We look for people that are also mission oriented when we hire and things like that. We take sort of a proactive and risk-based approach to our model development. So throughout the life cycle of AI development, we build in layers of safety and responsible AI. So it's not just an audit or something we do at the end. We really think about it from data acquisition and gathering, and how we can have clean data sets to model behavior, and thinking about how our models behave, and not only like what are the legal requirements for how our AI should behave, but what do we want our AI to do, and how do we want it to behave and be safe throughout the world. Using techniques like fine-tuning and reinforced learning with human feedback, trying to train the models to behave safely. And then on the product side, we also think through, what can we do to make our products safe for everyone? What kind of transparency can we provide? What kind of filters should we put on our models? What kind of product mitigations and safety and content moderation should we do? And then lastly, we think through how we should release our models to the world. So we have an iterative process where we We release our models to a small group of trusted users, get feedback, and then slowly and gradually try to make this technology available to the world so that it can really get accustomed to how capable these models can be. And then we react really quickly if we hear about things like jailbreaking or people using our models in a way that is not safe. We try to have a culture where we can act quickly and fix things as needed. And so as an example of that, for GPT-4, we had that technology for more than 6 months, actually, and we spent 6 months working on it and trying to make it safe for the world before releasing it publicly. And same things when we introduced the multimodality for GPT-4 as well, when we released GPT-4 with vision and speech and things like that. We also had the technology pretty well in advance. And for at least 6 months, we were testing it before we can release. So those are just some examples of things we do and how we try to take a safe approach and responsible approach to AI development.
Thanks, Ashley. You mentioned a few things about being mission driven and values aligned in culture. And Paul, when you and I connected just over a year ago, when you joined Lloyd's in this role, that really struck me about you as you're an incredibly mission driven individual. And so I'm hoping you can share a little bit as you dug into this role over the last year, some of your tactical boots on the ground learning about what implementation looked like. Any scar tissue or victories you'd be willing to share would be amazing. And then, what this means for how you're set up for 2024, especially as I know that automation and like scaling your AI practice is a big priority for you.
Yeah, exactly, Alyssa. And I guess some of the things I can share in boots on the ground activity that we're doing, slightly related to what Ashley said, actually, we look upon responsible AI as kind of 3 different parts. There's technology, process, and people, really. And on the technology side, what we've done is we've implemented a number of algorithms within our data science lifecycle that surfaces data points. So we have our statistical measures of fairness, like equality of odds and disparate parity and so on. So we surface some of those. We're also doing work around partial dependency plots, shapely values to again, give us data points to allow our data scientists to determine what they're developing and at different points of the development life cycle, whether they're going about things in the right way. We also have things like consequence scanning, which is really looking right at the conception stage of every project to determine, are there any bad unintended consequences of a particular deployment? And we have a technique, we have a methodology to go through this. And what really helps to do that is kind of diversity within our development teams. So we're really big on equality and diversity within teams. We think the different perspectives coming together along with teams of engineers is the best way of dealing with looking at issues that we may not think are really obvious. So I think on the technology side, it's about implementing technology components within the data lifecycle. And as Ashley said, we don't do our ethics and our AI safety at the end of a process just as we deliver it. We do it during the whole development lifecycle, and we're implementing what we call stage gates. So when we go from conception to understand, to develop, to deploy, we have a number of stage gates, and every project has to pass those in order to proceed to the next one. On the process side, we have independent teams that do things like model validation. So if we have machine learning or AI models, we'll have a completely independent team that will review all the training data that went into it, and they will check everything that development teams have done completely independently and come to their own conclusions. And that's a practice in financial services that's been happening for some time anyway, around things like risk management and liquidity risk and so on. And finally, I think on the people side, I spun up the Data and AI Ethics Board for Lloyd's Banking Group at the beginning of 2023. And we meet regularly, and that's comprised of fairly senior folk from across the whole bank, group functions as well as different divisions. And the aim of the council there really is to give opinion on what we call ethical edge cases. So those would be deployments of AI where we think there are real ethical challenges, where we're not quite sure, there are conflicting opinions. It's not so much about data protection or legality. We have various assessments to make sure our use cases already clear those hurdles. The Ethics Council is really there to debate, the hard stuff, the things that about a particular model, it doesn't feel right, or our customers would feel that it's slightly invasive. So spinning up the council or the ethics board has been quite an achievement, which I'm really proud of leading that at the bank, and that's going to continue throughout the year. And we'll see other governance forums like that as well spring up at lower levels of the organization. So I think people, process, and technology, Alicia, are the main things. Scar tissue, we've got a few, probably ones that I probably couldn't talk about too openly, but I'm really glad to say that we really are on the front foot when it comes to AI ethics and AI safety.
And I totally appreciate it. I think we all have scar tissue over the last year of the learning and how much collaboration it takes to really get this right. And so, I think I'm glad you brought up the people side of things, because that is like a deep fear that I know a lot of people have around how the rapid advancement of AI is creating a dual challenge. We have potential job insecurity due to some automation, but also a widening skills gap and a need to upskill as it relates to AI. So, Josephine, I'm really excited to get your perspective on this. Your thoughts on what's the best way to really equip professionals to get ready for this massive change, but also employment and HR departments inside of organizations to make sure that they're harnessing the best of their talent in this kind of very fast-paced change where we're seeing a lot of co-pilots and, support of productivity with AI.
Yes, Alyssa, you are right. There is now an amazing surge in the demand for upskilling and reskilling professionals and workforces and teams across governments, large corporations, startups, and SMBs. And the reason is there's one, as you said, a very big fear about job replacement. There's really a deep fear that AI is going to replace jobs, which scares a lot of people, especially those that are seeing their jobs as easily automated. And also the HR groups of many organizations as well are realizing that their workforce does not operate on a common shared language of what really AI is. And so we're working with them to provide a foundational training and understanding of what AI really is. And so our foundational training and workshops really try to demystify AI, because AI ethics literacy is now fundamental, not only for the tech folks and the machine learning folks or the lawyers and compliance, but every single person in an organization. And basically, there are three questions that we demystify. We use to demystify AI ethics. The first question is, what is AI? What can it do? What can it not do? How can we use it as an assistant and not look at it as a threatening replacement to our jobs? The second question is, what are the risks in terms of privacy risks, ethical AI risks, and human rights risks? And the third is, how do we mitigate these risks? And that's only when there is a shared understanding where HR people can talk to the IT people, can talk to the marketing people, can there be a shared culture for innovation. And so how we approach this also is from three lenses. As Ashley mentioned, we use a privacy, ethical AI, and a human rights design approach in every aspect, from development, deployment, to the use of AI. And the lens is, we start with privacy, the privacy rights, because data is the fuel of AI. So employees need to understand how to collect, use, share, and store information. From the privacy rights that they understand, we now layer it with ethical AI principles. And this is where fairness and accountability and transparency and explainability come in, of which privacy is just one of them. And however, as we know, ethical AI principles can be very subjective. There are 21 definitions of fairness, for example. And in this recent TED talk that I gave, I argued that ethical AI frameworks, which are voluntary, are not enough to ensure responsible AI. So on top of privacy and ethical AI, we now layer it with human rights. And because human rights is a universal standard by which we operate as members of humanity, we then have this mandatory universal standard of understanding what really enhances human autonomy, self-agency, and with the lens of privacy, ethical AI, and human rights, we can then move forward to a culture of innovation and in advancing responsible AI. And so that's how we work with the different HR departments and organizations, companies, and startups.
Thank you, Josephine. There was a great question in the chat, and it actually relates to one of the questions I wanted to pose to Kai as we move forward here is, you've been heavily involved in the AI Act negotiations, and curious what you think, what advice would you share with policymakers considering AI regulation in other jurisdictions? And just to pull off some of the Natalie's questions there, how might the first to legislate impact these other countries and governing bodies?
Yes. So one thing that I would really advise to not do, like the European Union, is to try to build up horizontal rules for AI that are applicable for every sector, for every use case in the same way, which is a little bit the conceptual problem of the AI Act, which is why I personally like the executive order or the AI Bills of Rights in the United States much better. And we as legal committee in the European Parliament have 2022 also proposed something like this, that you have horizontal ethical principles, let's say, that are guiding, but then you are making adjustments to sectorial legislation, because AI and transport is completely different than AI in health, in AI in education, and so on. So I think this is really the main takeaway, because in our discussions in the European Union, we saw constantly that this conceptual decision of the European Commission that drafted the AI Act was really, leading to a lot of practical problems. Then I think if you are now looking at what impact the AI Act will have globally, well, I think many member states will look, not member states, many third countries will look very, very, very clearly how the AI Act is working and what are the lessons learned. And I would advise them to do that, because again, many things in the AI Act, we are also unsure now in the European Union how it will work, what is extra needed, what where, for example, certain mistakes, and so on and so on. So I think we will only be able to make an assessment in 3-4 years. Until then, maybe certain parts can be taken over or can be taken as a starting point by countries like Canada, like Brazil, and so on, can be maybe integrated in their already ongoing discussions. And I think this we will actually see. And going back a little bit in history, the AI Act was also not an invention of the European Union. It was heavily based on, for example, OECD principles that have been discussed in the 2010s. And this is then, I think, also now happening with the AI Act, that other countries that do not have an AI legislation yet are taking over certain elements of the AI Act and maybe continuing certain discussions that we have in Europe, and then building on those discussions, develop their own approaches. And I think this is very smart.
There's a few questions in the chat, Kai, that I don't think we'll be able to get to on this panel, but feel free to take a peek and if you have a chance to respond. I think this is really meaningful, and I have questions about, what are your recommendations, just kind of to wrap up your comments, for organizations looking to implement and get started preparing for AI Act compliance? Where should they start? Or I'm hoping almost everyone has started, but based on what came out of this, what does this look like?
Yeah, Alyssa, your last comment was really correct in my opinion, because when we were or if we are looking back at the GDPR, which became applicable in 2018, we need to say that a lot of companies in the European Union were completely unprepared. They were taken by a surprise, and we actually saw a lot of CEOs saying, "Oh God, I completely missed that. Now in 1 month, I need to have or need to do, for example, data protection impact assessments," and so on and so on. My feeling right now is that maybe not 100% of all companies, but a lot of companies have started to prepare. There are already some governance mechanism starting and being created and so on. And this, I think, is a really good sign. And in addition to the GDPR, we in the European Union also added some other forms of public-private partnerships, for example, regulatory sandboxes. The AI Act is heavily based on technical standards, again, where companies are meeting and sharing experience and together developing common non-binding rules. We have also a code of practice when it comes to foundation models, so a kind of code of conduct that we also have in Article 69. So the AI Act is really all about working together between the public and private sector, and therefore my main plea to the private sector is, again, please start now if you didn't until now, and please use the lack of competences in many national competent authorities in many states of the European Union for sharing your experience, because states are looking forward to hear from you how they should enforce, how they should interpret the AI Act and so on. And those companies that are starting early will probably have the best outcome when it comes to the AI Act. And maybe one last thing that I want to say, especially in Germany, where I'm often very critical when it comes to digitalization, what I really like to see there, and it's also happening in other European countries, is that more and more companies are building networks together. We see it now around Munich, Applied AI, and so on and so on. There are really, let's say, digital innovation hubs or AI hubs that are popping out there and there. And this, I think, is another really, really good idea that we saw already in the past in the UK, in US, but now finally also comes into Europe, that companies are not waiting for the state to act, but they are proactive doing things, and again cooperating a lot with each other, sharing experience, sharing best practice, and so on.
No, thank you for that. And I hear the plea, and we often talk about the technical debt that can be accrued if you're not actually being proactive. And at this point, I would argue it's reactive not to have some strong things in place as it relates to the EU AI Act. Also, just the learnings and the peer-to-peer sharing. I think that's one of the things that's super valuable about this community and our member organizations. Paul, there's some awesome conversation in the chat, and I wanted to pivot a little bit to ask you about trust, and trust being paramount to, especially in the banking industry, but your stakeholders and clients. And obviously there's a lot of anecdotal comments around the lack of trust in AI. Also, that's changing too, that people are starting to get more comfortable with it. So I'm curious what you see in terms of the trends in your sector, or more generally as it relates to trust and how you're addressing it. And there's also been a lot of conversation about the executive presence and the executive buy-in around this. And how have you done this within Lloyd's to generate more trust internally and externally?
Yeah, it's a really tough question, actually. On the trust side, what I will say is certainly financial services within the UK, we're fairly risk averse as an industry, because we do look after people's money, and within Lloyd's Banking Group, our slogan and our kind of motto is, kind of help Britain to prosper, but not just prosper financially, but to grow in a really healthy way. So we try and strike the right balance between being innovative so that we can use technology for good, but at the same time, not wanting to be too aggressive in case that's perceived as being very slightly risky. So Alicia, it's a really fine line to tread. And we have a culture and a history within the company that goes back many, many years, where we've always kind of been people's partner. We've always helped generations of families and small businesses. So to get that balance right is really difficult. And what we do is, through some of the things I mentioned, we do talk about our use of technology and how we want it to help people. We talk about sustainability, we talk about diversity, we talk about helping vulnerable customers. So that's a real big thing about how we can help maybe smaller groups, disenfranchised groups, or minority groups as well, to really include them within finance and educating them about finance. So building trust it's not just focused on AI. It's about building trust through the organization, how we can help in a very wide way. So I think we're seeing that. I'm really glad to say as well that quite a lot of the UK-based banks, anyway, are really taking AI ethics and responsible AI really seriously. So we're seeing more ethics boards spun up in different organizations. The UK government have issued a white paper at the end of Q1 this year. All banks, including Lloyds, responded to it. It's a principles-based approach to AI safety and responsibility, in slight contrast to the EU AI Act, but definitely putting responsibility front and center and asking different industry regulators to work within their sectors to lay out what we see as kind of high, medium, and low risk use cases. So we're seeing a lot of activity, and the banks are responding accordingly, right? They're really stepping up, and we've got many groups that are being formed, and I participate in one of those groups as well, of AI ethics folk at the different banks. And we get together, we have meetups, we discuss the topics that are really important. And I think one particular topic which is quite thorny is the whole topic around fairness. I think there are a number of statistical measures of fairness, but actually what defines fairness within banking is quite difficult to arrive at, because although every bank and every institution would want to lend fairly, lending fairly across different ethnicities and across different groups broken up by protected characteristics can also lead to irresponsible lending as well. So striking the right balance between lending responsibly, in the case of credit lending, or even premium underwriting for insurance, doing that responsibly without giving the impression of unfairly discriminating is a really difficult thing to do. I'm really glad to see that there are many folk that have my role in the UK are actually trying to tackle that problem head on. And I hope that we'll be able to go back to regulators and say, look, this is our view of what responsible lending is all about, and really working towards a definition that includes all of those banks.
We often have the kind of the thorny conversation about fairness and how that's different than bias and how we grapple with that. So being able to hear that feedback and being able to triage that to academia, policymakers, and other regulators to collectively come up with a lot of guidance on it is helpful. Ashley, I'm curious. ChatGPT came on the scene and obviously continued to grow and improve. And all of a sudden, there was this big move to adopt AI in a lot of sectors or in a lot of companies that didn't really have an AI strategy before. And so there was this kind of inherent friction between like risk, innovation. I don't want to get left behind, but I also don't know if I know the game well enough to know the rules. And so as you've kind of gone into the world and people have, the uptake on this, as Var mentioned, has been massive. How have you learned to help people navigate the complexity of this risk and innovation approach? And I know your legal background obviously has a lot to play in this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think they have to be mutually exclusive. I think we view risk and innovation as one and the same, and we view safety as a critical component to success. I think it's probably going to be very difficult to be successful and have a successful AI product without thinking about AI safety and responsibility, especially with upcoming regulation. It's necessary to take the steps to get ahead and to make sure you have good governance and compliance in place as well. And so I think those, and we just talked about customer trust, and customers aren't going to want to use you if you aren't thinking through those things and having good responsible AI practices as well. So I think we look at it as just part of the development and innovation process. And I think having that kind of approach is what I would recommend to AI developers as well. I think I would also advocate for looking at the risk from like a risk-based approach, sort of like the way the AI Act approaches it, and probably future regulation will as well. Looking at your use case and what kind of risks and harms could come from that, and developing a program around that. There's also, the NIST risk management framework that's really helpful, and walks through sort of a bunch of controls that your engineers and product people might be used to seeing, that kind of a format, because they're in the US at least, and they're used to like SOC 2 or ISO controls and things like that. And so we found that to also be sort of a helpful way to orient people. Another practical tip that I can think of in terms of thinking through like what is responsible AI and AI governance and things like that is to think about like how that has played out in privacy and data protection. There's already a very robust framework for that, given GDPR and other privacy laws. And so companies often have that kind of muscle already. And so looking at that program that you already have, how can you map the new AI requirements and compliance frameworks onto, whatever you already have in your company? And can you build out those privacy and data governance frameworks further, and sort of like look at that as a starting point, to be able to think through how to launch and deploy AI safely and responsibly. I think those types of like continuity, or those types of practices has sort of helped when I talk to other companies, and has helped us internally also. So yeah, those are my tips.
We've definitely seen that. I'm like, don't recreate the wheel. You already have data governance. You already have, these other muscles. And so maybe just go to the gym for those muscles is the best way to do it. And, Josephine, this is a great kind of tangent onto your question, onto kind of the thing that we were discussing about like the speed. It's evolving so fast. I often feel like I have cognitive whiplash. Very hard for me to keep up with all of the change. And so what do you recommend for enhancing human AI collaboration, especially as like it becomes more prevalent in the workforce? One of our predictions of 2024 is that everyone is going to have an AI assistant or co-pilot as part of their, requirement for productivity. So what does this look like for you?
Yes, Alyssa, actually, I talked to a lot of people, and they said they're getting vertigo with everything that's going on in the world in terms of innovation. And so absolutely so critical to keep up with upskilling skills. The skills that we had last year may not be enough to help us cope with technology innovation. I wanted to jump on from what Paul and Ashley said about trust. The New York Times just reported the other day that there is this very big polarization among two big camps, the effective altruism camp and the effective accelerationism. And this probably emerged from what happened in Ashley's company in OpenAI. And what happened was that these two polarized groups, then with the effective altruism, they said, let's have AI safety, let's slow down, let's have more regulation. And the effective accelerationism, they said, no, let AI-free regulations be damned. And so how do we merge these two polarized movements? And so it's really by understanding how human and machines can collaborate with one another. And as we speak to different organizations, there's basically just this understanding first that what is AI good at? And it's good at augmenting human skills. So anything that can be automated, like administrative tasks, give it to AI. That's the first. The second is focus on human judgment, like critical skills, empathy, and insight, which then enables humans to be able to think through strategic decisions and and insight that cannot be done by AI, and realizing the limitations of AI. And the third is to treat AI like a colleague. So by seeing that there is not a fear anymore or a race to AI, because they really feel that they have a reliable reliable companion who can give them the information. You know, interestingly, I was speaking to some board directors, and they actually said that their ChatGPT is like a board member in their board, where every time there's a question, they ask ChatGPT, and ChatGPT gives them a very good answer that the board can then build on. So it's really interesting. And so I'd like to really emphasize that equity, diversity, and inclusion needs to be weaved in the different elements of how we use and deploy AI. One, of course, is diversity in data sets. Two is diversity in the engineers who model these AIs and who program these AIs, diversity in the engineering team, and also diversity in the models. But most especially, it's also diversity in leadership, in boards, in AI ethics boards, and also when conducting algorithmic impact assessments, to ensure that all the voices of the people who are going to be affected by AI impacts are there in the table. So that's one way we can ensure fairness. And so as Paul mentioned, it's really very difficult to have a very accurate understanding of what fairness is, and that's the beauty about it, because fairness is so diverse. What is fair to a white man might not be fair to a person of color. And so how do we layer fairness? We can layer it with a human rights law of the right to equality and non-discrimination, however that looks like in every jurisdiction where the AI is going to be deployed.
Thank you. We only have about 5 minutes left. There's been a robust kind of Q&A in the chat. I've tried to weave them in, and I know some of the panelists have been multitasking and active in there as well. So I'm going to take the final 5 minutes with the kind of the mind share of this panel to talk about the what's next. Like 2024 in my mind is going to be stratospheric in terms of what this looks like. And so, you know, the entire ecosystem is going to need to cooperate and communicate, and communication in, you know, and sometimes in translation. So what collaborative efforts, partnerships are essential for fostering this global community of practice? And how do we use this to shape a positive future with AI? What's missing? What does this community need to do? What can we do better? And you know, what are some solutions? So Kai, I'll start with you.
Yeah,
just a softball.
I think I slightly, I I slightly touched upon my answer already also to this point. What I would really like to see is that after now the European Union, but also other regions were kind of only focusing on themselves, only developing their own AI policy approach. Now it's again time for more international cooperation. And therefore, I hope next year we see more of what now happened in November, early November in London, the AI Safety Summit. Also shortly after, I was very, very positively surprised, as I said, the Chinese and US agreement to ban lethal automatic weapon systems powered by AI, and so on and so on. And I think this is exactly the direction where we should head to, which we should see more. And similar to climate change and other problems or risky areas, I think also on artificial intelligence that I do not see as that risky. I see it more as an opportunity. But even when it's about an opportunity, it would be extremely helpful if really different regions of the world are cooperating more closely. So this is really my big hope for 2024, that those positive signals at the end of 23 are really developing in much more international cooperation and alignment.
Ashley.
I agree. International cooperation alignment is something that it would be really great to see, and I'm also hopeful that happens. I don't think this is something that's lacking, but I do think that it's really helpful to see cross-sector partnerships and information sharing across the board. seeing industry work with government, academia, civil society to basically collectively share best practices, frameworks, if they're seeing dangerous capabilities or dangerous use of models. I think that kind of information sharing to let us all up level together is really, really helpful. The other thing that I think is also going to be critical is, as required by the AI Act, the sharing of information throughout the value chain and down the value chain is something that we also are going to focus a lot on, so that developers can have the information they need to make sure that they can comply and release products safely. And so I think these two things will help bring AI more safely and beneficially to the public in a way that is actually like feasible and something that we all can do and participate in.
Josephine and then Paul, and I'm going to wrap it up with one rapid fire question for the panel.
Yes, I think that one thing that's missing, I think, in what we're seeing right now is that law is always lagging behind technology. And I really wonder if we can have regulation that keeps up with the development of technology, because, and as a lawyer, I know that's not possible because we have 18th century legislation processes to keep up with 21st century technology. And so that's the reason why, if I had a magic wand, can regulation catch up with technology? And so that's my wish, because really, unfortunately, we have seen that self-regulation has not worked. And so if we have regulation to provide the guardrails for responsible innovation, I think we're going to be able to have a very robust digital economy where responsible AI innovation is more the rule than the exception.
Amazing. Paul.
Yeah, hi, Alicia. I think training comms and awareness, both within organizations and within society, is absolutely key, right? So educating boards of companies, leaders of companies, on how to responsibly roll out AI. And I don't just mean for their customers, I mean for their employees as well. So within Lloyds Bank, for example, and within many other banks, people are saying, well, what about my job? What about my role? Is it being automated, or is it being augmented? Is it being replaced? There's a real concern with people who are affected right now within organizations of what the future is going to hold for them. And I think educating boards and organizations on how to tackle that challenge in a responsible way, I see that missing from quite a lot of conversations, actually. We talk about frontier models, we talk about global threats and so on. So, low probability, high impact threat in the distant future. But actually, there's a real tangible issue right now within organizations. And I think education and training to make sure that we roll it out in the right way for employees is absolutely key. And I think the point made earlier, civil society and people, educating communities. At its essence, the transformer architecture, predicts the next sequence of words, in small tokens. It's not really AI. It's not really intelligence in the sense that I think some people are scared that it is. The whole kind of Terminator doomsday scenarios is what a lot of average folk who don't understand how this technology works are really fearful of. But actually, if we can describe them in a way that says, actually, they're built from this thing called an attention model, and actually it's really quite basic. So we have control, we have agency, and we can deal with this. And I think that will help to dampen down some of the alarmism out there. I'll pause there. Thank you.
We're at time. This was an incredible discussion. I want to thank all of you for hitting on the themes of collaboration, learning, partnerships. The rapid fire question, maybe the whole group can put this in the chat. Like, what are we most excited and optimistic about as it relates to AI and our AI future going forward? But I don't want to take us away from the next steps of our awards, which I know a lot of people are excited about. So thank you once again. And with that, I'll pass it to our head of marketing and engagement, Nicole McCaffrey, to hit off with our awards.
Amazing. Hello, everyone. So glad you're here. Just a little bit about the awards. So we established the Leadership in Responsible AI Awards to spotlight the researchers, developers, organizations, individuals, and initiatives that are pioneering real-world advancements in AI. These visionaries are leading the way in strategic areas, from influential research papers to open source projects enacting responsible practices. Their breakthrough work is actively shaping the responsible AI landscape for the better. Our award nominees and recipients were chosen based on public nomination and a voting process, as well as direct input from our community members. We had over 50 nomination submissions and nearly 1,000 votes tallied. So very exciting. Also, as we go, please feel free to congratulate our winners and nominees and celebrate them in the chat. So with that, let's go ahead and see who our winners are. So let's start with the first award, which is Outstanding Product or Service using the RAI Institute framework. That highlights a product or service exemplifying responsible AI through the use of RAI assessments and certification. And this year's winner is Armilla AI. Congratulations to you. Okay. Moving on to the next award, the Most Inspiring Open Source Project, celebrating an open source project enacting responsible AI principles through transparent tools and resources. And this year's winner, Hugging Face Transformers. Congratulations. Moving on to Most Impactful Research Paper, recognizing cutting-edge published research shaping the responsible AI field through rigorous scholarship. And this year's winner, Weird Facts, How Western Educated, Industrialized, Rich, and Democratic is Fact. Congratulations to everyone involved. Moving on to Outstanding Public Interest Project or Initiative, highlighting projects or initiatives advancing responsible AI through activism, governance, ethics, or public awareness. And this year's winner is NHS England's experimental responsible use of generative AI for electronic medicines information. Congratulations to the NHS team. Okay, 2 more categories to go. Outstanding Individual in Responsible AI, recognizing an inspirational leader driving responsible AI through research, advocacy, policy, or trustworthy frameworks. And this year's winner is Mapat Ocheng. Congratulations to you. And then finally, our Outstanding Organization in Responsible AI. This recognizes an organization integrating responsible practices into AI systems to foster trust and benefit society. And the winner is TELUS. So congratulations to TELUS. Congratulations from the entire RAI Institute team to all the nominees and honorees this year. Well deserved. And I'll go ahead and pass it to Bar to take us home.
Thank you so much, Nicole, and congratulations to all of our nominees and our award winners this year. So looking ahead to next year, we have 3 themes that we really want to touch upon. I think the kind of umbrella for these themes is that we expect the speed of technology impacts and the policy responses to increase. And so the question for our community is, how do we respond to this? So first is we are, can we get the next slide, please? First is next year, we're going to work even more closely with our growing community to scale our assessments, benchmarks, and certification programs. So we've worked with our members on pilots, on sharing lessons, and on incorporating our assessments, benchmarks, and certification program to date. So with our member BCG, for example, we co-drafted at the end of November a guide to AI governance for business leaders, which is the first in a series of reports on responsible AI. And we look forward to working with our other members to similarly scale our community's efforts. With Armilla, we're launching a partnership that combines an AI system level assessment provided by our organization with a potential warranty from Armilla. And we have a short video teed up on that partnership.
With the rapid developments in AI, is your business looking to buy AI that you can trust? With the rapid developments in AI, is your business looking to buy AI that you can trust? In today's crowded marketplace, it's difficult to identify which AI products are trustworthy and reliable. When procuring other technology and IT solutions, enterprises typically require some form of certification, safety rating, or even insurance. Organizations need similar assurance when buying AI. The Responsible AI Institute and Armilla AI offer solutions to build trust and protect companies against risk. Here's how it works. The Responsible AI Institute is a global leading nonprofit working to advance responsible AI. Armilla AI is a member of the Institute and a leader in AI risk mitigation and transfer solutions. The Responsible AI Institute assesses AI products and services. We use our controls aligned with the industry-leading NIST AI risk management framework. With our assessment, you can benchmark the AI you buy against responsible AI metrics relevant to your use case. We also provide guidance on how to better align a procured system with what good looks like in your context. Armilla AI brings in expertise and technology to conduct comprehensive and efficient AI risk assessment and underwriting. Armilla AI validates the quality and reliability of the AI product and can provide third-party warranty coverage guaranteeing its performance, backed by global insurers like Swiss Re. Together, we empower you to deploy powerful AI you can trust. Bring us into your next AI purchase and implement innovative systems assured to be secure, fair, and trustworthy.
So these are the sorts of partnerships that we're looking forward to having more of and scaling our efforts through in 2024.
The rapid development.
We're also making more of our work directly accessible and self-serve by launching a member portal in the first quarter of next year. So the idea here is that all of our resources, guidebooks, assessments, educational modules, community conversations on some of the issues that we talked about in the panel today and in the conversation today, as well as a directory of our members and their offerings, are all going to be compiled and accessible at any time by our organizational members as well as our individual members who are practitioners in in various industries and around the world. The second theme that we're looking to next year is, as discussed on the panel, AI is becoming a major workforce issue. And so a couple months ago, we saw research from Ethan Mollick and others based on the experiences of over 700 BCG consultants that just the use of ChatGPT out of the box increased their productivity significantly. We are going to see that scale across organizations next year. We also see that employees need a say in how AI is used. So we saw the writers and actors strikes this year. The executive order from the Biden administration reiterated that there's an expectation that employees would have a seat at the table when making decisions about how AI impacts their jobs. And so our hope here and our community's hope here is that AI is used to augment and bolster individual capacity rather than being seen as an alternative to employees. We've seen time and time again how people plus AI have had better outcomes than either one alone. And so we will need concerted approaches to achieve those outcomes at scale. And then finally, as we heard on the panel, industry and use case approaches to upskilling are really important. So just having a view towards how these AI issues present themselves in different industries based on the structures of those industries, based on the underlying issues and regulatory patchworks in those industries. And our organization is working to develop industry relevant content delivered with partners. And so an early example is a partnership that we launched this year with Harvard Business School to deliver courses on responsible AI in healthcare. And we have a short video on that partnership here. Great. And finally, as our final theme, it's really important to have a community approach to responsible AI. The issues we face are global in nature. So take elections, for example. Next year, we have 2 billion people in 50 countries voting. And we have to think through how we limit AI's impact on these elections, what's allowed and what's not allowed. And this requires rapidly learning from what's happening in other jurisdictions. So we are really looking forward to working with our community to advocate for the development of public resources like the National AI Research Resource here in the US, and kind of building out our civil society networks to both put guardrails around AI use, as well as to use AI to address shared global challenges like democratic challenges, policymaking challenges, climate change, and other challenges of a global nature. And we look forward to working with our community. What we're going to ask of you next year is to help us build this kind of strong international cooperation. So whether that's through our incorporating leading laws and frameworks and scaling our assessments, benchmarks, and certification programs, whether it's the convening function, the awareness building and support for standards to achieve regulatory objectives, whether it's providing input into the international codes of conduct that are being developed to show compliance with multiple regimes at once, as well as continuing to move forward on those thematic issues, ESG, the certification landscape, as well as workforce issues. So, responsible AI is a team sport, and it will require contributions from all of us. So thanks everybody for joining. I'll pass it to Patrick for closing remarks here.
Thanks so much, Var. We're so excited to have you all join us today. To wrap things up, we just have a lot of people to thank. So most importantly, we want to thank our members, whether you are enterprise, different organizations, or individual members, for continuing to support us. It's your initiative and leadership is what makes our work possible. So thank you so much. We also want to thank our Responsible AI Institute board members, our advisors, as well as our team members for our efforts in putting together today's event. And then finally, we also want to thank all of you who tuned in today. It's really through the Responsible AI community that we're able to accomplish and to be able to move forward with this work. While the community is growing and has voices from all walks of life, it's still very much a tight-knit community, and it's our shared commitment to advancing AI that really allows us to approach this work in a thoughtful and safe way. So we hope that everyone has a great holiday season. If you are interested in becoming a member, my email was just on there just a moment ago. Patrick at responsible.ai. Also, feel free to check out our website, responsible.ai, and there's a wide variety of different great information on there. So thank you so much, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you next year.
Thanks, everyone.